I was given a little Emerson combination VCR TV. It's a little 14-inch CRT set, and apparently it doesn't have a lot of hours on it, but I was told it just doesn't work. You turn it on and it turns off. So I've been sitting on this thing for a while. It's been sitting in the corner there for a few months since I got it. I figured let's take a look at it and see if we can get it to work, and if not, it's going to get turf. Let's check it out. I got here a little Emerson little 14-inch TV with a VHS recorder player. Now what's nice about this particular one, it's got audio video inputs on the front, and it also has all the full controls. So unlike a lot of the cheap ones, you couldn't do much other than play or stop. This one you can do the fast forward and rewind. So this one's actually a full functional VCR. Nice thing about this is I don't have to haul out a VCR and hook it up to my TV to operate it. I can just play it, but it doesn't work. So when I turn it on, I hear the motor start up right away. If I try to power it up, and then it goes off. Okay, now the TV's on, but I've got an error on here, and it turns off. That's the problem. Now before I pull it apart, let's just see if it's a mechanical problem. Will the tape go into it? Okay, got a tape into it. Will it play? So that's interesting. It does play. But when I eject the tape, what happens? Okay, it ejects the tape, and then it shuts off. When I try to push the tape in, normally something like this, when you go to push the tape in, it should turn on. There's a clue. This is a clue. Because typically what these machines do is they use the tape end sensors to determine if you're loading a tape or not. The fact that I can turn it on and it will accept the tape after I turn it on, and it will go into play. Well, the fact that it will play is telling me that the unit itself is working. But what I don't know is it a take-up side sensor, or is it a supply side sensor, or is it the LED? Because they use the LED that shines up through the middle of the tape, and the LED shines through to the end sensors. Now normally when there's no tape in, both sensors are going to see light, and that's how the machine knows that there's no tape. And when you push a tape in, the first thing that happens when you start to push the cassette in is there's a shutter on the side of the mechanism that blocks the tape sensors to tell the machine that you're putting a tape in. So if it sees no light coming through, in other words, if the light is blocked, that's what tells the machine to load. And it can use either the supply side sensor or the take-up side sensor. Usually they use the take-up, but they can use either one on here. So what we need to do is determine, is the sensor reading or not? Let's take this machine apart. I can interrupt it by just putting my hand in front of it and see whether we're reading the sensor or not. Another way I could do it is just try rewinding the tape and see if the tape stops when it gets to the end. Because if the sensor is bad, when the clear leader is exposed, it won't stop. So that's another way I could do that without even taking it apart. Let's just turn it on and see what happens when I rewind the tape or fast forward the tape. So if I put it in fast forward, turn down that volume. We'll see whether the tape stops when it gets to the end and whether it goes into rewind. Because if the tape stops when it gets to the end and goes into rewind, then the end sensor is good. But when the tape rewinds back to the beginning, if it doesn't stop when it gets back to the beginning, then the take-up sensor is where the problem is. So let's just rewind this tape and see what or just fast forward this tape to the end and see what happens. Okay, the tape got to the end, and it's now going to rewind. This is a short tape. So we'll let the tape rewind and see if the tape stops when it gets to the beginning, or whether it breaks the tape. it could do that too. Although this is a short tape and it's quite a thick tape, so I don't think it'll break it, but we'll see if it stops. If it stops at the beginning of the tape, then we know that that their sensors are okay. If it doesn't stop at the beginning of the tape, then we know that the sensor on the take-up side is not reading the LED light. But we know the LED is working because it did respond when it got to the end. So we're just going to listen. Ah, it didn't stop. You heard the tape stop there, and then it shut off. That's telling me that just from the symptom, looking at this, that we have a problem with the take-up sensor. Now, is it going to eject my tape, or is my tape stuck in it? Yes, it ejects my tape, and as we can see, the tape is pulled all the way back to the beginning. So it's not reading the sensor on the take-up side. Time to take this thing apart and see why. So this is the take-up side sensor here. This is the one I suspect is at fault. As you can see, it looks through this hole in the chassis, and it's looking at the light tower, which is just it's a reflector. The actual LED is below the chassis. It's back here. The LED on the mounted on the main board shines light straight up through this plastic. It's a plastic reflector, and that reflector beams the light across through this hole here and into this photodiode. I guess it's a photo transistor is what it is, but it's only got the two legs on it. The photo transistor itself could be bad, or it could be a connection on it that's at fault. Let's get a close-up of the solder down here and see if it's bad. Oh, take a look at this. That to me doesn't look like a good connection, does it? Let's resolder that thing and see if it changes the operation of this unit. Okay, nice and shiny now, and as you can see, it does not move when I bend the LED on the other side. The connection does not bend coming through here. So that may be all the problem is. It could be, of course, this component might be bad. This photo transistor might be bad, but I think it's probably the connections there. Let's put a tape into it and see whether it works. Okay, let's turn it on. Now remember, before you could hear the motor running and it would shut off after a few seconds, and now it's not doing that. Oh, yeah, okay. You know what I've got here? I got the ambient light. I got the ambient light here that's causing it to not read the tape. I'll just shield it with my hand. Okay. I was wondering why it wasn't accepting the tape. I'll block it with my hand here. Okay. There we go. Now it's able to read the tape sensor. If I go to play, and if I go to rewind, it should stop and not jam. So if I stop it, and I go into rewind, there we go. Now it's going into stop. Excellent. Go to fast forward. And if I put it into rewind and then move my hand away, the ambient light will actually prematurely stop this. So I'll go into rewind, right? And if I take my hand away, it should probably stop right away. Just like that. Because what's happening here is the ambient light is hitting the detector here. So that's what was wrong with this one. Was just a solder connection was broken. A solder connection was broken right there on that sensor. And I determined that before I even took the back off the unit. That's how simple sometimes these problems are. And someone threw this TV out, this combination TV VCR, because of a simple broken connection. See what year this was made. This is probably a relatively late model, I would think, for this type of design. So this was made in 2002, right? So Emerson, it's a Funi, but in the actual production time of these type of sets, this is one of the later ones, because it wasn't long after this that VCRs disappeared, and they were DVD players built in with the TVs, right? But this is probably one of the last of the combination CRT TV with a VHS deck built in. I don't know what year they stopped making them, but I would guess that this has got to be one that's getting close to the end of the line for production. Let me just get the back on this thing, because this one's fixed. And now I'm going to use this for really the only thing that CRTs are really good for these days, and that's playing these classic old games. You can't beat a CRT to play a CRT game on. I mean, you just can't do it. And incidentally, to adjust the picture on these ones without the remote, you can hit the channel button on the unit itself. You can get into the menu on these things, which was kind of nice. If you hit the channel up button, then you can use the stop button to move around. If I want to adjust the picture control, I think I press play to get into it. Which one do I press to get into it? Is it there? There we go. Brightness. I can adjust it up and down. And then press play, sharpness, tint, color, contrast if I want a little more contrast in the picture. When I crank the contrast all the way up, back to brightness, sharpness, etc. It's all done by, you can use the stop, rewind, play, and fast forward to cycle through. And then press the channel button. I think it was the channel to get out of it, or was it the volume to get out of it? So you can adjust the color and tint and everything without the remote control on this particular model. A lot of them you couldn't. Anyway, that's the only thing I can think of that that CRTs are good for, other than looking at tapes. But anyway, hey, it's back in service. Hey, if I wanted, I could actually put a blank tape in this thing and record my gameplay. Now, wouldn't that be something, since I don't know how to play these things? I'm terrible at these games. In fact, there's only one that I actually am any good at. I get interrupted by the phone there, so now I lost my game. We'll try it again. Okay, that's it. The unit's all back together and it's fixed. Yeah, CRTs, that's the only way to play these old vintage video games. The only thing they look good on is on an old CRT. And this is actually the perfect size, because if you have one that's too big, there's too much real estate to see. It's easier to play Pac-Man on a small screen where you can see the whole screen at once. So I'm going to play around with this thing for a bit, and we will catch you guys in the next one real soon. Bye for now. I was going to get that bugger.